Okay, we're on the cathead this evening. This has been immersed in a solution of homemade rust evaporator. Video to follow that later with all the ingredients and how well it works. There's no before photograph because viewers from the first episode will remember how bad this water pump was, and it has made an improvement. So it'll be interesting now to take this apart, take the valves out. We'll have a look how much of a difference it's made, if any, and if we can salvage it, we'll salvage it. We'll relap the head valves and we'll put it back together, and hopefully we should have a working head again. If not, we'll have to revisit and come up with another plan.
We'll have to take a trip to the spares department, which is only over there, funnily enough.
Yeah.
I don't know how well you can see it, if at all, from over here. There's actually another 236 Perkins over there, tucked away in the corner that we could potentially rob some parts off.
Let's get into it, is it?
Yeah, but I think we'll put all efforts into this first of all. We'll get these valves out now, check the condition of them. If they're not too pitted, which I'm on the fence about at the moment, given how much rust was in these ports when we put the borescope in there on the first video. If they are salvageable, we clean them up, relap them, and hopefully we'll get away without replacing any valves or valve seats. But we shall see.
One. Come back.
So we've actually got two valve springs on this head. And a proper stem steel. Not just an umbrella seal like we had on the Ford engine and the compressor.
Actually, I don't know, what do you think?
They're certainly not great, but they're not as bad as I was thinking. Mind, that is the rear cylinder, isn't it?
Yeah.
The one that wasn't...
It was 2 and 3 that were...
I think the rear cylinder was the best. Okay, so all the valves are out, and although not great, things are nowhere near as bad as I thought they were going to be. We'll go ahead and clean all this up now. But I think we may just get away with this. There's a lot of crud in some of the ports, as you can see here, but that's nothing bit of a scrape out isn't going to sort. And overall, I'm quite happy with that. I think we're going to be able to salvage this one. It's nowhere near as bad as as the head was on that thing, put it that way. Even the valves are not looking too bad. Although the actual, like flares or flutes, whatever you want to call them, are pitted, the actual faces, the seating faces, look like they were going to clean up. So we'll go ahead now and give this a clean up, bit of brake clean and some Scotch-Brite on these seats, clean all the crud off. Make sure we've got no pitting. Clean the valves up as well. And I think we'll have a go at lapping one and just see how it comes out. What do you reckon?
Yeah, give it a go. It's nothing ventured, as we always say. More brake cleaner.
Yeah. Right, if we could get a rag on that. So that homemade rust remover has actually done a pretty good job of removing most of the heavy rust off these. If you can't remember what he was like, I'll put the boroscope footage in now. But it was quite thick and heavy on these valves, and a lot of that is gone now, which is good. So this is one that has been cleaned up quickly, and that doesn't come up too bad either. So we should be able to just lap these back in, which is a bonus. I wasn't sure we were going to be able to be honest, when we first saw the state of this head.
Like I say, you had a good soak in that rust remover. And yeah, it works over time.
It wasn't that long really, was it? 3 or 4 days, was it?
3 or 4 days. Yeah.
As we said, we'll do a separate video on that for anyone who may be interested. But it's literally made up of just household stuff that you can buy at the supermarket.
Yeah.
And it's a heck of a lot cheaper than Evaporest, put it that way, per gallon. So we won't jump into too much detail on lapping valves because we covered that in a very recent video on the compressor. If you want to see a full in-depth walkthrough on the head and the valve components, how it all goes together, how it works, and an in-depth video on valve lapping, go and check that out, leave a link in the description. But for the purpose of this video, for those who may just want a brief overview, the purpose of the lapping, if you can see, we've got a valve seat in the head, and then we've got a corresponding machined face on our valve. So the purpose of lapping, you use a lapping compound, and we're basically going to get this valve to match that seat and create an airtight seal. Because obviously if we had any air leakage coming through these valves, we'd be losing compression. So when these valves are up, we want these to be airtight. So we use this lapping compound for that. We've got 2 grades, coarse and fine. Start off with the coarse, which does a little bit heavier cutting, and then we'll finish off with the fine then, to get the best finish on the seat and the valve face here. So the way we do it, a little bit of oil on the valve stem, just to lubricate that. Obviously you want to make sure there's no dirt or grit, especially not any cutting compound on this valve stem, because it will tear up the valve guide that's pressed into the head. And do you know what? Remarkably, there's no play between that valve stem and that valve guide. So we'll just put a little bit of cutting compound on it. Don't need a lot. Like so. We'll drop them in. And then we'll use this plunger. You can get attachments to go on the drill to do this. I think they're pretty rubbish personally. I've had good success using these. Never really fail, they do what they're supposed to do. Plunk them on there like that. And the cleaner the valve face, the better it's going to stick. He says. Hang on. Let me just clean that off.
Won't get the drill, shall I?
So bottom line is, these things are absolutely rubbish. No, in all seriousness, usually these things are pretty good. But I'm wondering, given the benefit of the doubt, the valve face is quite pitted, so I'm wondering if we're not getting very good suction on it. Oh, this is going to be a pain in the ass. You can't.
Commentator's curse.
Oh, you can't right there, can you? Okay, we might be here a while. What time's tea?
Tea, we've been time for breakfast, away we're going.
Okay, take two. Got a new plan. As with other things in life, we're going in from the rear. Oh, look at that. Solutions, not problems. So all I've got here is a piece of fuel tube. There's a snug fit on the valve stem. And a screwdriver. That's also a snug fit into the fuel tube.
Doesn't rely on suction.
No. Friction rather than suction. So if we take on.
Any improvement?
So we've got a very, very, very fine ring coming, but it's quite far back on that valve face. You can see it better on the actual valve seat, look. See the shiny band starting to form?
It is quite high up, isn't it?
It is there, but then it looks like it's on the back of the... valve face, when it shouldn't be. we got all them valves lapped in. They're not perfect, but they're a hell of a lot better than what they were. Eagle eye viewers may notice this valve's nice and shiny. Yes. So we did opt to change one of the valves out. Dad just popped out to the local engine shop. Luckily enough they had one on the shelf. And the reason for that is, look at the pitting on that one. Didn't really want to risk that and risk this valve, the head of this valve coming off, so for the sake of a couple of quid she is having one new valve. But they're all lapped in now. We'll get this head into the parts cleaner, clean it up, and then I think we'll start reassembling. So we've got all new stem seals to go in this, new gaskets as well for the plates for the water side, taking the water manifold off and the pump. It is still a bit rusty inside, and I'm wondering whether that rust remover didn't actually make it in there. I'm wondering whether it all airlocked when we dropped it into the tub, but it's not too bad. It does just come off when you brush it. But we'll get this in the parts cleaner now and see if we can't make a better job of it. Alright, so we've got everything cleaned up and we can crack on now and putting this thing back together. So we'll run through one in detail, just so everybody can see, for those of them maybe not be familiar with all this, you can see how it all goes together and all the components, and then we'll crack on then, get the rest in, and fingers crossed this isn't going to take us too long. So we'll start off by popping the valve in, a little bit of oil onto the valve stem, pop him up through the valve guide, and we'll pop our lower spring seat on. A little bit of oil on there. I like to add a little bit of oil to everything at each step. Really doesn't hurt. Pop that on there. And we'll put oil on there. On the other side of that seat, spring seat, and onto the way guide. Next on is our valve stem seal. Now the purpose of these is to stop any oil, because obviously when the engine's running, this top end here is constantly being fed oil for lubrication, and we wouldn't want any of that seeping down through between the valve guide and the valve stem, because we'd end up with lots of blue smoke and we'd be burning a lot of oil. So the purpose of these seals is to stop any oil entering the cylinder. you basically pop on there. They're just like a rubber seal with a little spring retainer around the top to keep tension against the valve stem. There's another O-ring fell out of there then. I was wondering why there were 7 in the kit. So the only difference as well, what I remember, between our intake setup and our exhaust is the exhausts have an extra O-ring on them. Now there was, so I have looked at the book of this, and it only mentions about putting them on the exhaust valves, and there was only O-rings on the exhaust valves when we disassembled it. But there's 8 O-rings in this kit. So do we put them on the intake as well? No, no we won't. Let's put it back how it was. Design team at Perkins know a lot more than me. So next on then are our valve springs. Now we've got a double valve spring setup on this. We've got the larger outer and then a smaller inner. The only thing worth noting really about these is they do have to go on a certain way, and if you can see here we got a tighter coil at the bottom. They need to go down towards the cylinder and sit on that bottom spring seat, and then it's just a case of putting the upper on. This can be quite fiddly, but what I like to do here, just hold it there. The valve's not going to move. Just hold it there with one hand. Valve compressor on the back end. Bit of pressure this way just to hold it there, and then as you engage the clamp, bring the other side of the spring compressor to the face of the valve, and then it'll hold it there. And the final piece of the puzzle are our lock collets. For those that don't know how these work, these collets are tapered. They're in 2 halves, so we've got 2 halves per valve. They come together like so around the valve stem, and as you can see there's a lip on the top of these, and that lip engages in the groove that is machined into the top of the valve, and then the actual top valve, I call them a valve seat. I'm sure there's a more technical term for these. These are also tapered, and the way they work and retain the valve is once that tension is let off the spring and is pushing upwards, it locks this collet into the top of that valve seat there, the spring seat, sorry, and pushes up on the taper, and that's what retains them inwards. There's no way for those to come out then. And these are actually what compress the springs. So if you imagine when this is all assembled, our rocker arm interfaces with the top of the valve. So as our rocker comes down, pushes the valve down, and then it is in fact this collet then that is compressing the spring. So all that load, that tension on that spring, is coming through this collet. Simple but very effective. Now I usually do put a dab of grease on these to hold them in. It does make life easier, but I haven't got any with me right now. I'll grab some if we need it, but let's give this a go without. See how much of a mess of this we can make. This can be quite fiddly, but it's not too bad. So once they're there, make sure they're engaged into the groove on the valve stem, and then it's just a case of, I say slowly, it's nigh on impossible to release these things slowly. You definitely want to make sure your fingers are not trapped in it. But release the tension off.
And that is pretty much it. One down, 7 to go. Well, there we have it. So all the valves back in. It's quite a nice job to do, actually. It's not difficult. All I'm going to do now, I like to just give these a quick tap with a mallet, just to make sure everything is seated. I'll go through this now, make sure everything is correct. And then for this one, it is just a case of putting this end plate back on here. The pump and the manifold is off. That's going to be included in a separate video on the rust remover solution. So we're not going to put that on. And we're also going to leave that off when it comes to putting the head back on the machine as well. It's a little bit easier to handle like this. So we leave that off. We'll bolt that back on when it's on the machine. Now, a lot of these gaskets in this rebuild kit are all paper, and you can see here, look, our gasket surface is rather pitted, and so is the actual plate. So I'm going to back this gasket with a bit of silicone, I think, otherwise that's almost certainly going to leak.
Oh, I can guarantee it.
Yeah.
It'll all go down when you put the plate on.
Put too much on, it all squeezes out into the water jacket, and then you're going to have bits of silicone floating about.
It'll only keep the rust company.
That'll do us. Got a big one there as well.
Is that the one with the P-clip?
No,
on it?
that one. So the bottom two bolts here on the corners also had a P-clip on them. And I just had a look. They're actually a longer bolt, so I'm going to chuck the P-clips on as a precautionary measure, as a spacer, just in case, because they are blind holes. Last thing you want to do is crack the head, don't you?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's about a wrap for this little episode on the Cat 428 head overhaul and reassembly. Hopefully that'll get us to the next episode where we're going to attach it and repatriate it with the Cat 4236 engine, and fingers crossed we'll get it to start. As ever, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.